we kind of delved into the mass casualty, mass shooting world with our foundation because that seems to be the biggest issue, at least media attention-wise. And my sister's case was nothing like that.
But it's also ironic that we're going to talk about your sister, obviously, with this mumbo-jumbo going on with the guy Luigi.
So yeah, just one night, June 10th in 2016, she was doing a meet and greet, and one guy just next in line. She always would open up with like a hug, because that's kind of how a lot of like some shy kids like to interact. And someone just pulled out a gun. My head is like, is this a prank? Like, is what's going on? And then I see my sister's on the ground. My initial instinct is I just run at him. So I'm fighting with this guy, get the gun away from him. We kind of both go to the ground. And like next thing I know is he just has a gun in his hand. And he just backs up against the wall.
Oh my. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the show. I had the honor of speaking to Marcus Grimmie, who's the brother of rising star at the time, Christina Grimmie, who was shot and killed at the age of 22 in 2016 at one of her shows. Right after the show, she had a fan meet and greet where a man pulled out a gun and shot her. And to boot, Marcus was there. So parlayed with the idea of just losing his sister, he was in the room where she was shot and actually subdued the shooter right before the shooter ended up taking his own life. So there's so much to uncover there, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to this man because he makes it easy to talk to. It was a great back and forth in many aspects. We covered a lot of grounds about not only his grief experience, but a great foundation he's working with currently on helping shooting victims' families continue on life, whether monetarily or just getting through their own experiences. So he turned it into something good. Again, very easy dude to talk to. We had a blast going back and forth about ideologies and how we both experienced our public loss in many ways. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you as usual for tuning in. I'll see you next time, and I will stop talking. Let's get into the show. Well, how long have you been doing music?
I don't know.
Forever?
I'd say after high school.
After
I
high
took it
school?
seriously, yeah.
What made the shift of you wanting to take it seriously?
I always loved rock and metal. I was a huge metalhead growing up.
Yeah.
And my sister was, she just exploded onto the scene with YouTube. So she just kind of started to just be able to get work just by luck of getting a viral video. And, I'm in the totally opposite. I don't like pop at all.
And she was early. I was technically probably relatively early with YouTube.
She was in the wild, wild web is what we like to call it.
And what year was that when she started?
I think she posted, man, I'm so bad at this. I think she posted in 2009 and she had her first viral video in 2010. So through that's when life started to really change for her and our whole family, really. But not really, because you didn't make money off YouTube back then.
Right.
So she could be making millions of views, but there was no like targeted ads yet, unless you sold merch. So she was just, started to get millions of subscribers. And at one point, she was the most subscribed to woman musician.
Your sister was the most subscribed woman?
Yeah. Yep.
No shit.
Musician. Yep.
It's interesting because that even makes it more convoluted because she was so young when she passed, and then she was already up, if you will.
Yeah. Let me think. I've actually just was talking to my dad about this. It's 2024. She passed in 2016. She is going to be gone longer than her music career, which is kind of a wild thought. And listening to your pod, you and your family speak, it's like 9/11 was a long time ago, but there were so many similarities of how when me and my family or friends talk about Christina, hearing you guys all just be able to talk like somberly and then in cheer, just all the memories. It was just really cool. It's because there is those things that I just love the conversation about. People we loved.
Yeah, and that's why we're here to, remember those you've lost. I suppose, obviously, we're going to talk about your sister. But what did you say about your mom?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Something else I just wanted to address. I loved in the one pod you did about, you're talking about how humor is a big thing. And, I made notes too, because I was something that a lot of what you're saying, it's like, man, I've been through grief things. We wound up helping other people as well. So I'm like really confronted, especially the grief with losing my sister, like the traumatic loss, because I lost my mom to cancer. She had cancer pretty much my whole life, but she passed in 2018, 2 years after my sister passed. So now it's just me and my dad. And it was just tough for my mom because, we all love my sister. But just thinking about how humor is something that's really kept me. And then just how you were saying, I forget how you worded it. It was so well. It's just like, yeah, it might be sometimes darker humor, it might be this, but it's like, you have to dial it back depending where you're with and seeing where other people are at. But that was something I had some of my closest friends, two of them, we've been playing games for years. Two of them have lost their moms too. And it's like, we have this like bond where we know what it's like. And it's gotten to the point where you can comfortably make jokes with each other about it.
Yeah.
And it's all in like good faith with each other. But it's funny how you can make other people uncomfortable, even like people that we're close with. But it's something that's like humor is something so specific.
It's so specific, but it is specific in jokes. Everyone has humor at some point, but then there's just different tastes, like you said, with the specificity of it. And my friends obviously know how, and oh my God, I swear, people like saw conversations, it wouldn't be good for the public because we're just so comfortable talking to each other. And like, obviously people know we're not being serious with certain comments, but the amount of 9/11 like meme jokes that I get sent, it's
I was going to say, I wondered how you thought about that because it kind of has resurfaced is like kind of something, but it is a serious thing happened. But that's kind of what I have to deal with too, as far as like gun violence is a serious issue.
yes.
But, you know, there's a lot of humor with it as well. And it's like there's a line where if it's not meant to like, oh, they're not trying to hurt me with the humor, they didn't send it to hurt me. I can see a line of comedy, but also understanding in my line of work with the foundation, a lot of people aren't comfortable with that subject, and that's okay.
Yes, you know? And that's okay. I think sometimes people may never be comfortable with that. Exactly. And that's just their paradigm, I guess. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think also, especially with experiences like we've had and people have a loss, it may take some time to get there. You might not see it in this moment if you're going through it. But it's also ironic that we're going to talk about your sister, obviously, with this mumbo jumbo going on with the guy Luigi, with the active gun violence that we're talking about. It's a different scenario, obviously, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we don't really have to tap into right now. I think that guy's getting enough attention. But I would love to, share with the audience what happened with your sister and we'll kind of rock and roll from there, and we'll cover everything.
So my sister was I'd say a very popular YouTube singer, and she gained even more notoriety through The Voice. So she had like a kind of a big internet culture fan base, and then she kind of got in the mainstream, which Voice fit her because she was a cover artist online as well, which obviously every artist that does covers always wants to do originals, but The Voice was a big thing for her because she was good at making originals her own. And that's what got her far in that. So, after that, we did some touring, US, Europe, a couple places in Asia, and she was doing really well for herself. I mean, she was an artist who could support herself and live in California.
And how old is she at this point?
In 2016, she was 22.
Got it.
So she was still a totally young adult. I mean, she's like still a baby. I mean, even now thinking like, wow, a 22-year-old is a baby.
Is a baby, yeah.
So yeah, we had this thing where after shows, we just like doing meet and greets. We've done them for as long as she's been touring, and you just kind of, after the show, you usually do free meet and greets. You just go to the merch table and you just kind of talk to people. Sometimes it's out by the bus, sometimes it's out by the van, whatever you're doing. And you just talk to people until the crowd kind of dies down or you have to go. So yeah, just one night, June 10th in 2016, she was doing a meet and greet, and everything was normal. And then one guy just next in line, she was just going to she always would open up with like a hug, because that's kind of how a lot of like some shy kids like to interact. And someone just pulled out a gun. And, I remember thinking hearing, it was just everything happened so fast. And you hear it your whole life. Anytime you're watching movies, TVs, video games, they always show it's like, that's the line, it happens. But it just was like that in my head is like, is this a prank? Like, is what's going on? And then I see my sisters on the ground. And my initial instinct is I just run at them. So I'm fighting with this guy, get the gun away from him. We kind of both go to the ground. And like next thing I know is he just has a gun in his hand. And he just backs up against the wall and he killed himself.
Oh my
Now,
Lord.
later I found out there were two guns. He brought two guns. So people say, I'm not religious myself, but I grew up religious, my family, so we had a funeral at a church and all, and had pastor involved. And, everyone's saying it's, a divine act, whatever. Like, so the gun jammed after 3 shots. And maybe, I have never tried to break it down rationally or whatever, but some people say, like our detective was like, it's not uncommon for, kind of crazy folks to just have a plan. Like, this is their backup. If something happens to the first gun, this is what's. So, but that's pretty much that's the short version of kind of what happened.
And there's so many layers to that. I mean, obviously, your sister just got killed and then you're there for it. So this comes back to the conversation of just multi-layered traumatic shit that happens. And, I feel like when people look at experiences of grief or something like that I can't personally relate to, there's just so much to unpack. I'm sure in that moment you weren't thinking about anything else but your sister, but then like down the line, that's an extremely traumatic experience for you to even witness.
Yeah, I think the toughest part, and I'm sorry, I'll probably reference a lot of like, just especially with your other pods, because I thought it was just really good. And I want to get an idea of just kind of what the forum is and all, but I think a big thing with grief is community. And we kind of delved into the mass shooting world with our foundation, because that seems to be the biggest issue, at least media attention wise. And my sister's case was nothing like that. It was one person was killed. Now, maybe, who knows, I'm not a big like conjecture, speculation person, but either way, it's gun jam. Only one person was shot and killed. Well, minus the suicide. So it was a single event, June 10th, 2016. 2 days later, or a day and a night, it was like the 11th, and I was the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando.
No shit.
So we were in a hotel there with some of the family of the group we were touring with. We had my dad and some friends flew out. We're like preparing to transport the body, and Pulse nightclub shooting happens. I just remember thinking like, wow, is this like the end of the world? Like it was just so Orlando's now up in arms. This is the biggest mass shooting to date, happening 2 days after my sister was killed. So it was just a lot. And the reason I bring this up is I think about that night often more, not just what happened with my sister, not just my dad happening to call me like 5 minutes later, just telling me, hey, we're getting ready because we were about to fly the next day. We had more shows on the West Coast. And I had to be the one to tell my dad. And that's, to me, one of the things that sticks out the most there. But it was just, I was alone. All the people that I've worked with, gone. All the fans that were in line and gone. The security is gone. I was in an empty room for, it felt like maybe 10 minutes, but realistically, maybe it was like 3 or 4. The cops got there really quickly. And it was just, man, it was just paralyzing. I don't even want to say I was scared. I wasn't like sad. I wasn't crying yet. I was just paralyzed with this, like, wow, I'm alone.
Yeah, you're
2 bodies, me, smoky-ish room, and then it's just bam, everyone's gone.
Wait, so at that time in that room, you're with the bodies?
Yeah.
So it was inside?
Yep. Oh, yes. The meet and greet was inside by the merch table.
Got it.
And it was a pretty big venue. It wasn't totally full, but by the time everyone was kind of leaving, so maybe there was, I want to say a quarter of the venue was left to just, if security's not kicking people out, they usually like to hang around. So,
what an eerie moment.
Yeah, it was, it's the one thing that sticks with me the most is just, then the reason I say it like that is there was a mass shooting in Thousand Oaks, the Borderline Bar and Grill shooting that me and my dad were fortunate enough to be able to like be a part of, like the community to help distribute funds and kind of help keep it organized with another nonprofit. And it went very well as far as what happens after mass shooting, because it's always a mess. And we can get into that later, but we went to this chapel. I think it was at Kowloon. They had this area where they had survivors come, and it was a small group of people, maybe like 100. You were invited if you were survivors or new survivors, or if you were affected. And just after a while, you just had people talking. It was kind of quiet. You had someone leading the conference, and then people were just talking to each other. And before you know it, everyone who was like helping get the conversation going was just listening. And it was all the survivors there, just kind of coming in harmony, and they were moving seats. And it was just such a beautiful, beautifully painful thing to see of how people were like sharing in their experience. And I'm thinking like, I don't have that. I wasn't connected in an event. Kind of like, again, it's very different too, but like with you with 9/11, with your dad, even hearing your family talk about how, when they were reading the other names and you could kind of talk to other families if you want, but you had each other, like you experienced that grief in like a spot. And it was just fascinating to hear how just other people handle those, like the initial things of grief. And
yes, and it goes back to what you said, that community. It is it's weird because especially with my experience, I did talk about it with my family, there was tremendous support within that community globally, obviously with the nation. But even like within that, you oddly still feel alone. There is that always alone, like, you know what I mean? Because you're still grieving your individual, but you have all these people around you, and that's kind of the beauty of it. So the importance of community, like you said, is a major aspect of it. And a lot of people don't have that. So it's like, but like that is the purpose of these conversations and the things that you're putting on. It's like to offer people that even may not have the community, because that support system, even just being there is massive, because that feeling again of aloneness is so prominent as a human in this weird, strange little marble that we're on. So in order to lean on other people, even if it's just setting up chairs, even if it's having a conversation, just holding that space was a tremendous process for me, because my support system, again, was for whatever reason, whatever woo discussion you want to have, I had that. And so for me, I feel very blessed to have had community and people around me as a support system that I know a lot of people don't have. So it's like, I can't take credit sometimes. Obviously, I think I'm proud of the things that I've done to get through my own experience, but at the same time, I've had so much help.
But yeah, even something like this, like purpose I've found too is whatever that means to the individual, just like what you were saying with your different perspectives, keeping an open mind, things, but like you found a purpose, an outlet for your grief to even help other people. I mean, having me on here, like I look at this as like, I get to have a conversation with someone else who understands grief to a level, not that like I have anything to tell anyone or anything. It's just like, I just get to share my story with maybe someone who's interested, and just with someone else who I know has a deeper level of understanding. Not that that's what it's always about, is like, I need to find people that really understand, but it definitely helps. It's definitely a very powerful connector in the grief world.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, this isn't the exact right phrase, but it's like misery loves company.
Yeah,
it's like that camaraderie in a shared experience, even when the shared experience is unique in itself. Like, I don't know what you felt. Like,
Yeah, well, catharticism. Like, that's what I wrote at the top of my notes when I was listening. I was just, because I called my dad when I parked here, and I just listened to the other one of you a couple of days ago, listened to the family one on the way here, and I was just like, wow, it was like, I felt healing just listening to your family talk. Just like what is it, 23 years from then? Or I don't know when you recorded that, how many it was, but I was like, wow, like that long ago, just hearing it's just, there's a familiarity of just.
I think that's a good way of saying it because, I kind of feel very similar in a sense. Like sometimes I feel like I have nothing to say, but it's not saying like when I speak or express my experience or what I've gone through, it's not saying this is the way it should be done. It's just my experience.
Exactly.
And that's the point of it. It's like you pull from what you can find the familiarity if you want, or I think it just sparks ideation. I just want to get people thinking. It's like they may not agree with anything I ever say, but then even by disagreement, that spawns more thoughts. And then from that thought, you start figuring it out yourself. Because at the end of the day, I think we have to figure it out ourselves. Maybe pull from other experiences and stories like yours. But I think that's part of the process. I want people to get thinking and just explore these ideations, even if you don't agree with certain modalities or beliefs or whatever it is. I do want to bring it back to the moment that you said when you called your dad, because that's such a powerful impact. So what was it like talking to your dad to break the news that your sister just died?
Yeah, I definitely, it's funny. Ironically, like that is the thing that I remember as being the hardest thing, because again, watching my sister get shot was like, it's done. I got to witness it, where I think of how many times the story is told, I had to tell my dad, and people hear about it. It's like it's only a story. And I remember talking to my dad, telling him like, just frantically, just being kind of like calmly, frantically, just being like, hey, Christina was shot. She's no longer with us, I believe is what I said. And, he was just, in disbelief. And he was saying, well, maybe is an ambulance on the way. And I was like, I was at peace knowing like, no, Dad, she's not suffering. She's gone. And, eventually when the cops and stuff got there and stuff, they did try to resuscitate. They put her in an ambulance, but I think she was gone and she wasn't suffering. So just that was able to give that peace to my dad. But no, it was a very hard combo, because then I knew he had to tell my mom. And it was just him preparing to see us the next day. And now we're away on tour, It wasn't a super long tour. It might have been gone 20 days at that time, but it's still like, missing my dad and mom. And the last time, they didn't know that was the last time that they were gonna see it.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part about the shock value of an experience like that. And then, people that have a slow death, if you will, it's that age-old question of which do you prefer? And they both fucking suck. But it's the idea of there's something about that goodbye, right? There's last moments. We put so much weight on if someone passes suddenly and they're like, oh, the last call. It's like, I don't know. I understand that feeling, but at the same time, think about everything that happened before then, the whole experience that you have with that person. That's what truly matters. And I'm kind of rambling on that, but you just reminded me of, so I was looking at a WhatsApp message. I forget. I accidentally almost stumbled a message from my sister, and we never talk on WhatsApp. And I forget why. And so there's only one message in there. And it was the message that she sent me saying, David, call me when you get this. Because that was the message when I was in the air, when I found out my mom went into cardiac arrest. And I didn't have Wi-Fi. So I turned on my phone with a message from my sister, who never messaged me on WhatsApp, texted me, call me. It's one of those texts or messages that something's up. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because, like you said, that biggest impact with you was that phone call with your dad. Yeah. And he was on the other side of it, like kind of my side of my sister breaking the news. And those are just, that feeling of those calls, those messages that you get when it's something not good, even though he didn't know, but you had to break it to him on the phone, is just like, you truly feel the whole energy of your body just gets sucked out of you. So it makes sense to me as to why that you breaking the news, granted with what just happened, it was such an impactful moment.
Oh, he shared. I mean, we have a great relationship, and he shared anytime that I call him. There's just, even if it's a C, doesn't matter what's going on. It's just, you never know what's going to be on the other end. And I don't blame him. It's, imagine just one day, like, your kids are living the dream, having fun, and you get a call like that. So no, he shared it with me a couple of times like that whenever he gets a call. That's why he tries to always have his ringer on. It's because he's one of those guys now, his notifications are always silenced except phone calls.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. Recently I was talking to my friends, like, I need to get a house phone because I need to shut my phone. I need to give my number to a few people because I shut my phone off too. But after that experience, I'm like, I only want to answer the call if it's my sisters or someone, calling me for, God forbid, whatever reason. Yeah. But that is a trauma. And it kind of relates back again, I do want to continue to dive into your story. I'm not trying to hog the mic.
Oh, no,
But
please.
my mom's partner is kind of traumatized with sleep because he was right next to my mom when she made her last, quote unquote, last breath of the time when her heart stopped.
Yeah.
And now he's, sleeping's been tough. Whenever she moves or makes like a snoring noise or something, he like reacts and think it's something. And he's like, it's I'll just live with it. And I hope that's something that he can, work through because he was there. And again, back to you, it's like being there is a totally different ballgame. It's a totally different traumatic experience that you got to work through, have worked through, I'm sure, that we'll get into. But that is like another just cherry on top, a shitty cherry on top of what you already gone through.
Yeah,
So,
I do want to say, like, you likening it to the your community after 9/11 and the losses of life there is and the reason I like to bring up the Pulse nightclub shooting too is Christina was getting national attention. Yeah, it got kind of snuffed out, which for me, I found it was great. We don't want to see, my sister on the news with these horrible headlines. And then Pulse happened. And what we noticed, there were hundreds of musicians, actors, whatever, posting, and you'd hear them like talk about like this one, like Justin Bieber, 21 Pilots, Charlie Puth, like so many people, Demi Lovato. They put like to the Christina Grimmie and the victims of Pulse. Christina Grimmie and the victim, and there's the names, and I'm thinking like this is what's spawning for me and my dad. I had to go to a memorial, a candlelight vigil for my sister. And I'm thinking just like, dude, had to be almost 1,000 people there. It was at like a baseball field in our hometown. I mean, it was just mob, just seeing people from all walks of life that I've seen coming out. The support me and my family got was incredible. The amount of pictures, drawings from fans. We had fans fly from all over the world to come. Like, we had so much support. And then I'm seeing on the news, it's like, wow, these Pulse victims aren't even getting a name. And not to mention, it was a shit show of just where money's going. That's when I learned about the fraudulent activity for GoFundMe's and fake lawyers, ambulance chasers, people trying to get over on these victims. Money's going nowhere, pretending like, oh, we're raising a Pulse fund. That's when we started to realize there's a need for this because our manager made a GoFundMe. We had someone from Texas who randomly showed up in this purple funky suit. Hey, I made a coffin for your sister. No charge.
What?
It's Zelda themed. She was a huge Zelda fan. Zelda themed coffin. Adam Levine paid for the whole funeral and the bereavement process. That was her coach. And Selena Gomez, who was, her parents were her manager at the time. Just like everyone is helping us. We got so much support that it was just like, we didn't even need to worry about anything except our own grief. And it really, I think, helped us come together as a family. The homicide detective at the time even said, it was just straight with me and my dad. And my aunt flew out and some friends was like, this either brings families super close or it will tear them apart.
Absolutely.
You just need to be aware of like, this is just the reality of it.
And it brought you guys closer.
Oh, yeah. It was just, and we were already a pretty close family. Very fortunate with that. But no, we really came together. But I'd like to attribute it to the support we got. Not only monetarily, people cooking, and that's what else. Oh man, that hit me like a hammer with your family talking about like when all your siblings were just like, Mom, we want you to make food again. I was like, dude, that's so like, because my mom's a good cook too. And we had people bringing us stuff. And I remember there's a moment, I don't think I said it like that, but I was like, I kind of miss my mom's food. And I was like, wow, and then how you guys were, I don't want to say fearful, but we call them, in this nonprofit world, they call them year marks instead of anniversaries, just because. But like thinking about those, the first too. Mm-hmm. What's our first birthday? Kind of our first birthday, our first holidays, and then there's the first. Yeah, it was cool. You guys are wording it too. But one of the people we helped from the Borderline family, she said something that I think about every time we talk about it. It was like her daughter's name was Christina too, was shot and killed in the Borderline shooting. They said it was like 2 days after the shooting, the trash people were coming, and she was just like, it felt like they were in like this little weird bubble of like, it's morning, everyone's going, like taking care of them, don't know what to do, and the trash people are coming. And her initial thought was like, do they not know what's going on right now? Like, I lost my daughter. And I was just like, man, like what a mother thing to say. Like her world is upside down. It's like, you stop doing your work. No, everyone needs to stop. And I resonated because that's how it felt too in Christina. I felt like we were just in a different world. Like we transferred from whatever reality we were into another where it's just like everything was now about, wow, my sister's gone. Just like that.
Yeah, and you kind of just said it in a way that I heard someone speak where it's like almost reality just split. Like in that moment, everything and that's kind of how it is. Like it's almost like a multiverse thing where that experience happened, then all of a sudden you're in a completely different trajectory of life and everything is just completely flipped upside down. Then what do you do from there? And that's part of your story. And, I ignorantly didn't even really, I was considering, thinking about this conversation, and it is fascinating to share that public aspect. It was almost two flip sides of the same coin where, you know, my dad was one of thousands, but your sister was the main focal point of this publicity that was around it. So what did you pull? What did you learn or experience from the public aspect of your grief with all these celebrities surrounding your sister's death?
Oh, you know, I think, man, that's how long ago it was that now it's almost like mass shootings started to become like, oh, here we go again kind of thing. Man, it's so sad to like, man, when that pulsing happened, it was huge. I mean, like, you know, because it was still like potentially a terrorist attack, as well as an attack on the LGBTQ community, as well as just a mass shooting.
Yeah.
So it's like that was very politically multi-layered as well. And we were just tired. This is when another little aside that if you've noticed in the future, like a nonprofit we work with that has ties with the government and the FBI's, they push to get a no notoriety clause, the National Compassion Fund, which is now Victims First. And it's awesome. Now it's like, because before it's like they would just put the face of the shooter and do this. And it's like, it's almost like it becomes more about the enragement of that. They're giving this person a platform. So that's one thing I noticed is like, man, the story was about that. And then it becomes less about, I mean, Christina's story was about her. Maybe there was some interest in what happened and why, but it was, you know, with the killer for Pulse. It was like, is he ISIS? Is he not? Is he acting alone? Does he hate the gay community? What does this mean for the gay community? What does this mean for gun laws? It's like, just like that, less than 24 hours, or actually immediately, people are like not forgetting these families are all mourning the losses of siblings, loved ones, family members. And that was the takeaway for me. I'm getting to celebrate my sister's life in a tragic way with people that who knows that I would ever see again, just in this whole thing. And so seeing all the celebrities and say things, it was bittersweet. You're like, wow, they're all paying attention to my sister. This is great because she's a peer of theirs, but at the same time, who's never going to even get to be at her full potential. But at the same time, she's listed with just another number, a statistic of folks that they probably don't have as many pictures. Like I still today, sometimes I'll see new pictures of Christina a couple times.
That's kind of the best too. This is the news, it's like a new memory.
That's what I mean. And some things or an older picture I didn't know was taken, but I remember the event. Like, and that only happens because you have thousands of fans.
So you have to separate the two, like the public aspect and attention, and then how you personally handle it.
Yeah, no, there was a way where it helped me. Like I'll be honest about maybe I didn't realize at the time, but there was a selfish level. Like I don't want to be sad and mourn. I don't want to be like, woe is me. So it was helpful that I can focus on like, dude, these families are like really roughing it too. Like we had a GoFundMe for $100,000. We had people bringing us food. We had so much friend support. I had family members, friends like, yo, come stay with me. We can, like, do you think all these people were getting that? So it was just hard to like, you know.
And then again, it goes back to the whole thought of this conversation, this podcast. Again, it's like there's just a lot of people just don't have certain resources. Like you said, like some people are slugging it and then they lose someone and they have no one coming to the funeral, this, that, and the other. So there's just so many, and I don't even know what you do with that. Like I said, that's why I hope at least like all I can think of is like at least conversation and sharing more experiences. I would love to talk to people that don't have the support and then see how they figure it out, because I don't know how they do. I don't know how they do it. Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard because all they want to do is just talk about the person they love, and usually that's what it is. Because especially in dealing with in the world that I deal with people that lose loved ones in gun violence, it's similar where they're usually close with them. Because maybe if they weren't, I wouldn't hear about it, or like it wouldn't go through the channels to get to us. But yeah, they just want to share stories, and sometimes they're not ready. A lot of the families we wind up helping too, it's like a year or two removed too. It might not be like right away and they call, because a lot of people don't know what to do at that moment. Because that's another thing is with grief is I don't know how you and your family were for the first 6 months to a year, but they tell you don't make any big decisions. Like you want to, like that's what we did. We didn't use their social media. We didn't think about a nonprofit. We were just like, leave us alone outside of like, good comfort, but we're not trying to go to concerts. We're not trying to go to Disney. I'm not trying to like, we're like, man, we just want to be alone. But then you can't be too alone because that's not good too. So, but we had each other. But that's what I mean. And so it's like,
it's so complex. It's so complex, and that's why I think a lot of people ask the question, "Am I doing this wrong?" Like I don't. There's maybe levels to doing it wrong if you're diving into like a fifth of vodka or something like crazy that's just not good for you. Sure, maybe even that's necessary for like a couple of days. I have no idea. But it's like there's like you bring up one point, like you don't want to be too alone, but then you don't want to be too covered with people. It's just you kind of got to just figure it out. I think that's where the open-mindedness of this conversation isn't just hearing people's experiences and exploring ideas. it's being open-minded to trying things that may work for you, whether it's writing, talking, being alone. I don't know. You got to figure out what works for you. But I think you do have to get it out. Whatever getting it out is, I think part of it is just feeling it and expressing it and exploring different things that work for you. And this applies outside of grief. This is just life bullshit.
Exactly.
It's like, what makes you feel good? And rock with that, but it's also okay to feel shitty for a little bit because that's just the nature of it.
Exactly. And yeah, there's so many. I'm sure you heard all the stories too, like the platitudes and on. But there's like metaphors, like the one I think that's like there's the ship in the ocean where like when it first capsizes or crashes, that's when the waves are huge. So grief hits like the waves, and then it just goes time. You're still floating there, but the waves hit less and less. So I've heard so many of those kind of like anecdotes, and they kind of hold true to an extent because time does heal a lot, especially if it's healing properly. But it's still hard,
Yeah, especially getting cut off so quickly. She was so young. Because I see in the comment section all the time some people that say they're, decades past when the person they love died, and they're like, my life is still horrible. My life is still shit. And people are just, quote unquote, stuck there. And I just wonder why.
Well, are you familiar with Catherine Shears?
No.
She is, I don't know much about it. I wound up looking into it really. I think she's at Columbia, somewhere in New York. She is like the leading grief expert in the country. And I just went in because I was so curious with the concept of all. And she kind of coined the term like complicated grief. And she's the one who was like pushing that, where it's this thing where you can kind of get stuck in it. And that is something that can turn into like complex PTSD or traumatic grief because it stems from a traumatic incident. And when people get stuck in that, it could never heal ever. And not that, because some grief doesn't heal in the same way. There's always scar tissue there, but there's folks like us where, we might even still be dealing with demons, but we've turned it into something that, we are moving forward. It doesn't mean we don't have bad days. Doesn't mean we're still, but I'm on a pathway to healing because that's what they call it too. There's no end goal. There's not like, I'm good. We don't miss our loved ones anymore. But we are a way where, acceptance and purpose around that person and purpose with ourselves. And you're right. There's a lot of people, I wouldn't say I know a lot of them like I'm close to, but I see it and hear where it's like the death has messed them up so much that they don't know what to do. And it is a hard thing because it's unique to each individual.
Yeah, the uniqueness is what I think makes it complicated in many ways. Yeah. Because it is complicated because it's unique to you. And when it's unique to you, it's like it's not just how you respond from that event after. It's like, okay, what happened before in your life? Because we have these paradigms and who we are and how we respond to things and relationships and all these different variables that affect the grief after and based on what happened to your life prior to that in many ways. So yes, it's complicated as shit. And I do want to ask you in regards to your sister, was there any motivation as to why this guy shot your sister?
No. So the darndest thing, and for there was a very, very small subsect of like the conspiracy theorists out there for it too, because it was just surrounded in some weird stuff. But just to put it all out quickly, there was no, he didn't leave a manifesto or anything. There was no note. He did leave something behind to say, I want my body to be cremated and put with this in seeds for trees or something. That was it. Yeah, his room had the weird aluminum foil over his windows, no posters. His hard drive was encrypted. The FBI wound up getting his phone, which we thought from the police, and they tried to look, but they told us, no, there's nothing to it. There was no history of her reaching out to him. They've never met before. There was nothing, no Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you can think of. No foreign communication. There was something in his work. He worked at Best Buy, I think Geek Squad or something, and I think there was, his friend said he wanted trying to get hair plugs to impress this internet girl. So maybe he had a coworker that knew that he had an infatuation, but that's the extent of him even mentioning it. There was nothing, literally nothing. It's just such a weird.
How do you pull from that?
Honestly, I've kind of delved into the world of, at the time it didn't matter because of having to deal with everything firsthand. But the more you kind of looked into it and saw nothing there, I'm just kind of a believer. I'm a stoic, I love stoicism. I think it's a great way to there's things we can't change. There's things we can't know. And I chalk this up to me personally that with the information that we've gotten, I'm not digging any further. His parents or step parents, whatever it was, they didn't want anything to do. They didn't have any information at either. So I wasn't going to look into it further. If there was new information presented, if someone happened to dig, I'm not going to be oh, not interested. Yeah. But it's, from what we looked at it on a surface level, there's not much there. He's just a crazy guy with I don't know what his motivation was.
And I wonder if stoicism is the way I approach it too. Maybe this is not the right example, or it might be dulled down or sound insensitive, but kind of correlating back to some people that, seems like their life is, no life is ever the same, but they're really stuck in a weird place that just they don't truly feel like there's any recovery of it. And it just feels like to me, like I just think these things happen all the time. And it's, again, unique. Like, not that 9/11 happens all the time, or
that one's pretty
famous people are getting shot. Like, obviously that happens too, like, but not exactly frequently with
I think
your
there's
sister.
just typically there's a motivation behind it that everyone can wrap their heads around. Not that they need to.
Yeah, the lack of motivation is what makes it so even more bizarre.
That's why I think there was some conspiracy theorists that, I've had some people, Christina does have a lot of like the internet folk people. So a lot of them can speak very candidly in messages. And I kind of always appreciate it. I'd rather you be honest with me. I don't want you to, there's no elephant in the room for me. To some people, sure. But yeah, no, some people have brought things up. And her boyfriend at the time too was like, really, he missed her obviously, but he wanted to like talk to the parents, do this. And I was like, yeah, I encourage him to do it, but don't drive yourself nuts because there's a good chance nothing's there.
So he's saying there's some people that do fight for an answer.
Yeah, there's definitely people, but sometimes it's like weird with me. It's like the MK Ultra, like, the government
yeah.
sent someone like this. And I was like, I don't know. Like, Christina she didn't work for the government. She wasn't like I always called her respectfully, she's like a B celebrity at this point. She had a career. She was doing very well for herself, but she wasn't an A-lister. She could get gigs. She was doing really well for herself. She really had a cult following with her YouTube base and starting to get a mainstream one. But not enough that you'd think of like, Selena, the famous, like she was huge when she was killed. John Lennon, huge. Not that I'm saying you have to be to kind of get weirdos to like you, because she definitely had weirdos like her, but we never felt in danger in meet and greets. Yes, there's always weirdos. Yes, there's always people that are creepy, may go a little too far, but that's why we're there to just keep it. No one where we'd ever think you need security because someone's going to pull a gun.
Yeah, she didn't have like a documentary coming out about child trafficking. Or
exactly,
like
that's
that.
what I mean. Exactly, and she, we lived a very, suburban parents, kind of like,
Yeah, and that goes back to the idea that like, in the extravagant ways are, you lost your sister and I lost my father. It's like, I don't know, the death happens, and I can't say it I don't want to say it any more complex than that. Like, I expect the unexpected sometimes, and this stuff happens. It may happen in a unique way, but once it hits home, it obviously feels foreign. But death and people dying happens, so that's to be expected. Exactly. It's just when it's cut off short, obviously it slaps you in the face. But I just feel like people sometimes create a shock factor of when people die. Obviously, it's shocking. I'm not diminishing that. But to me, in my head, going through my experience, it's like people die, and people die in the most wild ways. So it's not completely shocking to me. And that might be, again, just my own weird brain of dealing with it. And it doesn't make it less painful. It still hurts.
Especially in today's day and age, not to be like insensitive, but it's because gun violence is such a problem. Even at the time, it was still starting to get a little worse, but now it's like, people kill kids at elementary schools, man. Like, it's crazy. People go to malls and shoot. So for someone to go to a concert and shoot, like, you're right. It's just not, I can't wrap my head around where someone's mind needs to be able to do that, especially with like, and then I'm going to take my own life. Like, there's a lot going on there that I can't delve into. And if there was nothing, so the point I was making with it is, if there's no evidence, like if something came forward, I'd be interested because it's my sister. I loved her. Would it help? But when I look at the end of the day, is it going to make her death better? No, it's like, he actually had a dream that they were in love and he he thought they were going to the afterlife together. Is that going to make me feel better? Or if he was part of a government thing to close up, kill Christian singers or something, I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter. Whatever the random case could be, it doesn't change the fact that she's not here. She left a great impact with people in her life. She left a great impact. Like, she was just such a good human being.
And that's a very interesting way of looking at it. And I feel like I would relate and resonate with that in this case of sometimes the knowing doesn't make a difference, but we do put a lot of weight on knowing and getting that quote unquote closure. But it's not even sometimes the answer. It's like a step into moving forward. Some people finding that answer. Okay, now that's closed. I have this answer, even though it doesn't change anything. Now I could put that behind me and I can move forward, I guess. Like,
I read it somewhere. Like, closure is a myth. Closure is bullshit. It's not real. It's something like Hollywood put up. It's in storybooks. It's in our myths that we were told around campfires. It's a movie thing. But it's like, I think it can help personally. Like, it feels good to get it. But so many people, because it can be obtained for certain things, doesn't mean it has to be. And I think that's our mind. We're humans, right? We have to put things together. Mm-hmm. We're like puzzle oriented. We like putting things in groups, categorizing things. And I think it's the idea of it's just like, oh yeah, there has to be a reason, right? Because everything else. But as you were saying, this world's crazy, man.
Crazy.
Like there's not always going to be an answer. So obviously it's not, I wouldn't go around telling people like, don't look for closure. But it's like, if you're going to be obsessed with it, I think there's healthier ways to just kind of be moving forward.
Yeah. And there's case by case basis where sometimes getting answers will help you. Sometimes it won't. And in your case, you're seeing as,
exactly.
The guy's got, maybe it would even be different if that guy was still actively running around and you want to find him. That's different. That's
gone. Another thing too, is the court say if he didn't kill himself, he got locked up. That's something that families we help is a huge issue. Because now that's something we can help give money for. It's like transportation. Because if you have to go to court every 2 years, whatever the time, sometimes 6 months, that's hard. You have to see your family member's killer all the time.
Yeah, it's a whole other
So
dimension.
we're fortunate he killed himself. Like, oh my gosh, imagine we had to deal with that. This guy'd be locked up. Because we're pretty forgiving people. As in, like, if he showed remorse, I'd be like, I don't want to. Like, I'm all about rehabilitation.
Yeah.
But it's still like, it's easy for me to say that. How would I feel if this guy's like, this guy killed my sister?
And those are the variables. That's the variables that make it complicated.
Yeah, it's just really tough. And it's just really nuanced, just the grief in general. But, closure in general. But the other thing about with my mom. See, what's funny, you talked earlier about the two kinds. There's like the slow drawn out, and there's the immediate traumatic, bam, it's gone. Where my mom was really long until we knew it was one point, probably in like May of 2018, her doctor's like, it was weird. I was in the room with her, me and my dad, and the doctor was like, the cancer will take you. It's just a matter of when. It just got to that point. And I remember just having to like talk about that as a family. And she was a fighter to the end, where I'm like, I'm down. Let's just hang with my family. I'm cool. Like, I'm ready to go. If that's it. My mom was a fighter, and that's how she always was. So she's been told that before, and she was able to fight it. But this time, she wound up having to go on palliative care. She went to Mexico to try something like there where they just took care of her. And and so that is something that a lot of people, I accepted too. My mom had cancer my whole life. You always knew the ups and downs and what it could take, but some people trying to find these answers, the closure of why did my mom die? She was a super Bible-believing Christian. It's like I could look at like, God, why would you take it? Or, well, is there an answer to why? Does this affect my character? Is this but sometimes people just die of, I know a lot of people don't like to hear it, but that's just the way that I look at it, is that's the way life is. Like, I'm not special because my mom had cancer and because I can do something. That's the whole like absurdism or existentialism. Like if it inherently meaningless, she died, I can turn it into something powerful. But I don't know necessarily that she died for a reason. God did not give her cancer for whatever, however many years, or if there is a God, this did not be orchestrated. The universe didn't orchestrate this potentially for me to give me meaning, or it could have, or I can take that and find meaning in it. And that's just the difference, where finding your own meaning versus there is an answer there, and that's what people look for at closure.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too, is is finding that meaning. Like, we decide that, and whether you pull it from some existential God did this, did that, okay, that's also meaning that you're giving it. So I think the response of the meaning is important, but also kind of give yourself grace on the meaning too, because you could obsess on that meaning. And is this the right meaning? Am I doing this right? I think we got to listen to ourselves. But do you feel like because it sounds like what I'm hearing, you have a very rational approach, whatever rational means.
I guess you could say that.
Like, you look at it in a logical sense, and whatever logical is to you, because what your logical may be crazy to someone else.
Exactly.
But it does seem you're looking at it kind of in a similar way that I was explaining it, of this happens, and okay, how do we move forward from this, while not neglecting the person that we just lost?
The emotions are incredibly important, and they're not. That's another like misconception about stoicism and like trying to heal. Is like you need to stuff your emotions out or just deal with them and then be done with them. No, man. Like emotions are amazing. Happiness, anger, sadness. You need them, but they make horrible leaders. They're excellent followers. So just in that approach too, it's like, man, I think of my mom almost every day. We were very close. That's the pink in my hair, is because I never got a tattoo yet, but she died of breast cancer. So just ever since she died, I've just always had the little pink in it. Just for her. And she was like, me and my dad, we were the shy ones. Even my sister, little. My mom was, dude, she could talk.
Yeah.
She was
You don't seem very shy.
Well, that's because you're a really good host.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate the plug there. So hopefully some of my listeners are good. Where's the camera? Oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that. Now I'm looking at the camera.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, it's also when you're in a field, for me, like shy is, I'm never going to be trying to get my voice to be heard, but if I'm in a format where it's like, hey, two people can be talking, you're asking great questions about a topic that we care about. And that's something else that when I'm talking to you that are going through grief, and by no means am I like an expert on it, but as someone who's walked through it, and people can come to me like, man, this hit me like this. How did you deal with it? And I was like, well, one, there's no one right way. And two, it's like, you need to find things that you love to do. And that's what me and I had some best friends. We got together and we're like, what are things that we love? And it's like, I realized if I'm in that vicinity of these 5 specific things that I really love, I'm super comfortable with talking.
That makes sense. Yeah, being comfortable in areas that you're comfortable with.
And then if there's things I'm uncomfortable with, I love to learn, like how you are. I love that idea. It's like I have a really open mind. I love learning things. Like I don't necessarily believe in a lot of things of that, but I love hearing people's stories. You know,
I agree.
Neglect what someone says.
We're storytelling creatures, and that's why I think when you say that you're not an expert, you're an expert in your own experience.
Sure. Well,
you know what I mean? And that relates to everything that we're talking about. And again, when I say things, when you say things, I don't expect people to be like, that's the way to go. It's just, you can pull from it. And that's the beauty of stories. I think people, there's the author of the story that has their own intention, but then there's the creative aspect as the reader or the listener, in this case, that you can kind of still interpret someone's story in your own way, even if that wasn't the intention behind it. And then you pull from it and create from your own experience.
Hopefully. The way you say it, I think that's a great and honest and compassionate way to discuss. Because I like the Socratic method of discussion, not debating. I'm never going to try and change someone's mind. I love discussing though, even if we disagree. But it's like my intent is like, I want to just hear what you're saying and I want to say what I want to say. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can maybe one of our minds will be changed, maybe. But that's not the intent. The intent is like, interesting. I never heard that idea before. I don't know if I agree with that. This is what I think.
100%.
And so it's discussion and dialogue versus like debate and arguments, which a lot of people love. And that's what gets the clicks, right? People love these discussion, like boom, like you destroyed this person with logic and like.
And I think that's where you and me are kind of similar. Again, I've known you for 30, 40 minutes now, whatever the heck it's been. But it's that I wonder if it's getting attached to certain ideas and beliefs that become personal to you. Because again, the divisiveness and the clickbaity stuff, whenever I talk about beliefs, religion, or the afterlife, which I've talked about a lot of times, it's very divisive in many points where people just get very, very pissed off. They get very pissed off, but I don't get pissed off. I don't really get pissed off when people say things that I don't personally resonate with. I don't even want to say personally believe because I'm malleable to changing. Like my opinions and beliefs have evolved, and there's still always a tiny little question mark even with my beliefs because I
love that.
I don't know.
I would say the same. That's
like a tiny little question mark. I may be more passionate. I really resonate. I always say resonate as opposed to believe because maybe they're the same thing. I don't really get pissed off when people see things different because how many friggin' people are there in this world? When I see people, I see it as, wow, it's like a tiny little universe. Everyone's in their own tiny little universe and 2 people in the same room could see the same painting a completely different way. So it's, at the end of the day, someone else's beliefs don't have to piss you off. And my thing is, if it pisses you off, don't look to the person that's quote unquote pissing you off. Ask yourself why it's pissing you off.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to us. And
exactly.
I just don't, I personally, again, don't align with when people get pissed at different beliefs. And I'm very on board with you're saying totally this agree. Dialogue. My mom always said you should have been a lawyer because I do take devil's advocate. I do ruffle people's feathers with conversation. Often the times I find myself speaking and with amongst friends and we disagree, we don't align with certain whatever perspectives we're talking about. I'm just sometimes taking the other side just to explore the dialogue. Exactly. And I'm just because I say something, that's the thing. When people say something that is just exploring all angles of a conversation, now this day and age seems like just because you uttered those words, that's what that person aligns with. I'm just bringing it up as why can't we talk about this?
Because we live in such a clickbaity world where everything's about the snapshots or the voice line, the quick. So it's like you can say something like that where even just I'm prefacing a thought, maybe even something I disagree with. I just got David saying this. I'm going to put that up. And then people don't look at the context. They don't read the story. They just click the headline and read the comments.
That's it.
And that's it. So that's why a lot of people are scared to have these kind of discussions too. No, not these specifically, but those, whatever, could be controversial. And that's why it's interesting because religion and talk about the afterlife. I wanted to check out one of yours where someone was talking about it. And I'm like, that's interesting because I know so little about it. Mm-hmm. My dad studies it because he loves the Bible and all. And I don't know what to believe. I'm like you. I just got a big old question mark. When people ask, I always said, are you atheist? I'm like, no, I'm agnostic. I'm open to the concept of religions and the afterlife. I'm just not convinced by it. That's it. But I liked how you put it. There's a little question mark there.
Like a tiny little question mark in the corner.
Share some stuff with me and I'm into it. But people get so worked up and they're so dogmatic about everything with how they believe it.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. But at the same time, it gives me a little, makes me a little antsy when people are very dogmatic in a sense. They get angry at other people.
That's what I mean. Like they're dogmatic enough that they're going to say something hurtful and hate-filled to someone. Where someone's like my dad is very dogmatic and objective about it, and that's great. I don't disagree with them. So, I just listen and like, oh, okay. That's...
I was raised Catholic, went through that whole thing, and I even it's like monthly or every monthly. One of my best girlfriends, her father puts on these Bible studies, and I go, and I'm probably the least biblical person in that room ever, and I think he knows it. A shout out to Warren. Warren's the best. And he puts on these Bible studies where, he talks about the Bible and passages and themes that he correlates with just the way we live our lives. So he's speaking in a biblical way, relating passages to the way we live life. And I love listening to it because, again, the way he talks, he doesn't push it down your throat. He accepts everyone that comes in the room, regardless of whether you're... I don't think there are any Satanists in the room, but if you were a Satanist, Warren would just be like, okay, and maybe have a conversation with you. He's not going to force God down your throat or Jesus or the Bible. When I see other people online talk, like really forcing, that's when I'm like, that doesn't sound Christian or Catholic.
That's the point.
It doesn't even sound Catholic
or
Christian. You just
witnessed like real Christian love. That's what they're about.
And that's why I love that. That's the way it is. It's not forced upon anyone. And I like the way you're talking about it. I'm not here to debate, even though maybe I've used the word debate too much. It's a healthy conversation of exploration of ideas and beliefs. And then with the willingness, as long as you're going into the conversation with the willingness to hear them, listen to them, and be open-minded to shifting your perspectives. People are so afraid of being wrong. And I think that's when you go down 20, 30 years of a life of believing something, and then someone rocks your world with something that maybe deep down is like, oh, that's an interesting point, but I'm not going to admit it because it rocks my foundation.
But I think that's interesting. And then how you were saying, where I feel like if you're constantly open-minded, it helps. If I learn something that I was wrong about, I'm a little better about it. Because that's how I think. It's like, I wouldn't say I'm a humble person, but I'm like, I love to go in open-minded. And like, if I found something new, I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe 100%. Sometimes when you're in the heat of a discussion with someone, you might not. But my mom was great about that. If she was wrong, she was Italian and fiery, she'd always come around. And that's what me and my dad wind up taking from her. It's like, dude, like I'm wrong all the time. About so many things. And that's why I love about, like, I'm super into fitness and weightlifting and learning about, like, there's still things that you're breaking habits from culture and even things I learned when I was in high school to then 5 years after. And I'm like, I'm constantly learning. And that's the best part about it.
And it's kind of a good analogy of, because I stay active and work all the time too. And I even still to this day, I've been working out since I was like 16, 17. And I'm still finding myself, I've been doing squats or bench press or something like a little wrong this entire time.
Elbow position or shoulder. You're still learning.
But now it's my comparison is kind of relative to this gym aspect. I'm doing this squat the wrong way, and now that I'm doing it right, I can lift 40 pounds less. But I'm like, is that going to damage your ego or not? You know what I mean? And then it's back to these existential conversations or conversations about, anyways, like you learn something that is correcting your form, but now you're lifting a little less. I'm going to continue to lift this in the wrong form because now I can still lift more and hold my flag up.
You're going to get hurt that way.
You're going to get hurt that way.
And it's burn out
and if people want to live their life that way, I'm cool, whatever. Yeah, exactly. I'm just not going to let it affect me. And in moments, sometimes my human aspect and that ego aspect, I feel like, wait, did I just get hurt by that? And like, what am I doing? Like, no, I don't want to take this all too seriously. I don't, and maybe that's wrong, but it's not wrong to me. I don't think anyone knows. I feel like no one fucking knows.
I actually think, my opinion on that is, I think it isn't. I think that's the perfect way to be, unless it's maybe in your immediate vicinity or someone you're training where like, oh, by the way, you could get hurt immediately, like urgently, you might get hurt if you do that. But outside of like, if you see it on a video, I'm scrolling on Reddit or Instagram, I'm not going to comment, bad form, move on. Like that's that's where it's like, that's tickling my ego. Where one, it's like, my intent. Because again, philosophically, like I really like the intent-based, duty-based, where it's like consequences are important for like actual things, but for morality and all, I really do think intent is very important. It might be the most important. So if your intention is truly like, man, I don't want that guy to get hurt, or like, you know what, man, when I was his age, that's what I thought was right, and this could really help him. So if you're sharing from that, you're not like, maybe secondarily, tertiarily, yes, there is it feels good to help. It's not the primary driving force. You're genuinely trying to help someone because you learn that way. Right.
Yeah. And back to those comments of people that, maybe force certain beliefs on you. There's a difference between someone saying, you're going to go to hell because you don't believe in Jesus. Damnation, find the Bible. Or there's people that might be like, I respect your opinion. I found the Bible. This is why it's helped me. I hope if you consider it someday, that'd be beautiful. All right. There's different ways of just with intention, I think is what you're saying, that can be approached. And I think we're just in this mindset of just separation. It's like we're all we're all one, as corny as that sounds, and
Yeah,
we're all trying to figure this out. So what is with the animosity? And it's okay to
I think it's what you
disagree.
said. I think it's the ego. I really think that is the root of so much of the discourse and the anger. And it's, for whatever reason, whether it's culturally attached ego or personal or your anger filled, or it's like he has more than I do, or I have more than he does, and I earned it, and whatever it is, that is such a root cause of just this like looking down on other people or propping yourself up. Because I think if people just looked at like me, just two people having a conversation, we're literally just trying to learn from each other, just share our stories and grieve, talk about your dad, talk about my sister and mom, we talk about her family. Like, it's just kind of like almost when we'd meet people, even when in college, middle school, work, you just talk to people. Maybe there's a little element of like, I kind of want to get put out myself a little so they learn about me, but it's not like this where it is online now.
Yeah.
Where I put it, everyone's trying to like self-aggrandize. Everything is a brand. I think sometimes we forget that sometimes two people can just talk about our life and our family.
And that's it. It's just talking. And then sometimes, but I like the aspect of, it's a blend of talking about shitty things that happen to us, but I don't always want to dwell right there, because again, I think there's like solution-based discussion, and maybe I think talking about how shitty you feel marinates if you care. That's all you do. Like, it's a blend of good venting that I think is healthy. Sometimes you need to vent. But I heard a buddy that wrote this book that was talking about, kind of stop there. Like, maybe pick one or two people that you want to vent and let go of that negative stuff. But if you keep telling the negative stuff over and over again, you're just kind of keeping yourself there. So I'm a believer in the solution-based conversation, which I like to try to innately find the arc of the conversation. Like with your conversation, your story, you share the traumatic experience, that terrible little dark spot, but then it continues on in a linear fashion, which is not grief, it's not linear, into something that you've found meaning, and now you're helping people, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And we're not marinating on the sadness, but you're talking about your approach to continuing life. And it's amazing what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
But I do want to get a little deeper on the mother's aspect of those two experiences. You lost your sister that way and your mom that way. Were there any differences or any more challenges or meaning that you found from the difference of those two grief experiences?
Yeah, just from the sheer volume of support and people surrounding my sister's loss was very comforting and very, my mom's was a lot more still, because it was Christina's mom and it was only 2 years removed. It definitely still got attention, but that one hurt more in a weird way, because you just didn't think it was going to happen right so soon. Like there's this idea, and I'm not super religious at all, but just seeing that, like, man, my sister or my mom made it this far. Like, is it really, this is how it's going to go? And she's survived some serious things from doctors. They said, oh, it's looking really bad here. And she turned it around. So this was another, could this be it? And so when it kind of like dawned on like, wow, this is the end, it was just hard watching her slowly kind of deteriorate. Where Christina, that fast and it's over. And then you just, you can play the games of what if I was standing here instead? Or what if we didn't go to it? Like, just kind of like what you were saying too. It's like, you don't want to dwell on what if my dad didn't go to work that day? What if he called out? Because it's like, you could do that for so many things. So they're very different. But at the end of the day, the main feeling of just, wow, I need to learn a new life. It's like another split, like reality, like we were talking earlier. It's like, wow, I don't have my mom anymore. She was a big, we were very close, and I don't have my sister anymore. Wow, we were like best friends. And it's just kind of figuring a new norm, which kind of forced me to get even closer with my dad, which is really cool. So, we keep my mom alive in discussion, and we get to tease her. That's why I still think, if people at home listening to your solo pod, I loved it. I know you said, if you like this, like, should I do more? Yeah, I just, it's such a great look, because I really focus on the laughing. For us was always huge. And my dad had a thing where he says every time when he talks to fans or people, especially for the first time when we do events and all, he's always like, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to cry. He just wants to get people like comfortable right away, because sometimes people will cry and I don't want you to be uncomfortable, or they'll laugh at something and be like, is it okay to laugh? Like, no, dude, there are two very okay, good things. And for you, it just, I don't know why it's funny, because I've been laughing literally since my sister died. Like, just finding joy in things. And it helps that I have really funny friends, but I really kind of have to attribute a lot of my healing and grief is just finding things funny still.
And you tapped into something that I brought up recently, was that it's kind of giving yourself permission. Like your dad said, it's okay to laugh. Giving yourself permission to find joy still is a very big thing because there is that stigma, I believe. I mean, there's maybe a million reasons. I always wonder, I'm curious, do you think if it's just a societal stigma of you do this, should do that? Women get judged or men get judged for dating shortly after because you should be waiting.
Yeah.
Should. I don't know. And maybe there's some people that jump into a relationship too quick, sure. But there's this societal paradigm about how to handle things. And to me, my paradigm is it's okay to find joy even in the middle of grief because you have to grieve and live. And to me and you as well, that laughter, it's like life is just one big dark comedy to me. I think it's one big dark comedy. Like there's so much darkness, but there's so much light at the same time. You can find the humor amongst the darkness. And I think that for me was an important way of handling it. Yeah. It's just, I can, again, it's timing like we talked about. There's certain moments, maybe not the best time to crack a joke.
And awareness of who and what, yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you and me were together next to a casket, we'd be laughing the entire time, as fucked up as that may be. But that's you and me. And then certain people, I have to read the room and it's not the time for that. Exactly. But laughing is, they say it's the best medicine for a friggin' reason.
It is.
It really, that's the beauty of like comedy. And I love stand-up comedy. Like you go to this place just to temporarily disconnect from the bullshit of life. And the way they do it is by making fun and making a joke of some serious stuff. Exactly. And in that moment of laughter, you feel good. And it is a release. And for a moment, you get a chance just to completely detach from the stuff that's messing you up. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And I will make fun of everything. So I won't do it too much, I guess, on this podcast. In your case, even though I think you'd respect me a little bit more if I did. Yeah. But what about with your mom? Since it was a slow death, did you have conversations with her about her potential of dying directly with her?
No, not a lot. A little bit because, so again, my parents and my sister, they're Bible believing Christians. So it's like they believe they're going to heaven when they die. And so it's like, it's almost death as you can be joyous, where it's just like, yeah, we're not going to see us now, except for maybe the non-believer. Yeah. But as far as for my mom and dad, it's like, yeah, it's sad because you're losing on this plane of existence here. But no, it's almost like she looks forward to, almost like I get to see Christina again. Mm. So we didn't. And another thing is, I just had another friend pass too, not too long ago. He got cystic fibrosis and he had 3 double lung transplants. And he was just such a champion. And it really, when he was getting close, and, he's like my mom, battled a lot of, came out of ones that were like, they were, very close. But their family was saying, hey, just encourage him. Just encourage him. Like, don't say like goodbye. So even my goodbye to him was me just like, hey, I look forward to seeing you soon, Travis. And that's kind of what it reminded me. That moment was like, brought me back to my mom, because that's what it was like, where she was a fighter. So in her mind, she's like, oh no, even when her mind started to go because of like the cancer taking her, she was still very like, oh no, yeah, we're going to get through this. We got this. So I had to like go along, even when it's like, I don't think so, Mom. But it's like, yeah, no, I think there was a lot of that. We just got to bond because we got to do more things together. And I looked at everything like, this might be the last time I do this with my mom. So I think I have this gratitude of, what's the word? Intentional hanging with her and listening versus just like the normal shooting shit. Like, oh, hey mom, yeah, what's on TV now?
Yeah, and that's a big thing to pull from of how we could approach everything. But it's hard to narrow in that way when someone's not going, and then we all have this shit going on in life. But again, I feel like I've actively worked on that. Sometimes I catch myself and I'm sitting down with someone, I'm going to look at my phone. I'm like, why am I looking at my phone? Yeah. No one's calling me right now. Let's just stay right here.
That's just because we're addicted,
Fucking addicted, dude. This thing, I don't like it. I went down a rabbit hole of ChatGPT the other day, 2 days ago. My buddy was explaining like different ways of messing with ChatGPT. And I was like, I have to go to bed before 1. We were on the phone for like 2 hours. It was like 12:30. So I'm going to play with this for 30 minutes. He's like, knowing you're literally going to be up all night. I was like, no, I'm not. I was up till 5 o'clock in the morning playing around with ChatGPT, working on something, so I was productive. But what I'm getting at is just these little devices are freaking me out.
Yeah, they're designed to just keep our attention.
Literally.
Almost everything is.
Dude, I was talking about food the other day. People were talking about sonar marketing or some shit where they picking the crunch that would just... It is just... And I think that is part of the detachment of this world that we're in. There's so much going on, and I think we need to dumb it down. And I feel like we're kind of at a place where people... I think we're in this weird revolutionary consciousness aspect. Maybe it was COVID where people had to face the mortality, and now we're asking those questions again, which is a good thing for a good time for this podcast and having these discussions. I think we're kind of, it's a blend of technologies advancing so much where I could pull us away from that. But I think it is important to go back to those tribal days centuries ago that were just asking those questions and coming back to going inward and asking these things. And it may sound woo-woo, but I think that's the real world. The real world is inside us. And
we are the world.
We are the world. And I think that's people get pissed off. So we are God. I'm not saying I'm God, but I think maybe we're all a part of whatever God is, may or may not be. And I'm hoping these big questions, these difficult conversations accomplish those thoughts. And this is all I can ask people to think.
Yeah.
And, I love the way you approach things. And it's just curious to me again, like one of the last questions I want to ask is, so what do you believe? And you said you're agnostic, but what is your belief system on what happens when we die? Or you just have that big question mark?
Yeah, just question mark.
And you're fine with that?
It's just okay. I think that's where the absurdity of, I was really into philosophy, and not because of my agnosticism, but it's because of my not even a search for the truth. It's a blend of I just want to learn what way smarter people think about things, because I don't have that many original thoughts. People have thought, way smarter people have thought these things. So I just wanted to see, maybe a rudimentary understanding of and if I really found something I liked, I'll go into it. And Camus had the myth of Sisyphus, which I love, the idea of the absurdism, which I'm more subscribed to, I guess, existentialism, where I'm not convinced there's any inherent meaning in the world, but we as humans, we can put meaning on things we do and purpose. Does that mean anything when I'm going to butcher this quote, the one where it says you have two deaths. There's when you actually breathe your last and when someone says your name for the last time. That's some kind of cheesy quote, but it's is that the case? Does any of it matter? It's the only thing that matters is who cares when someone says my name last. Some people do. No, some people want statues built of them and
legacy.
Think of, legacy is important. That's what we say all the time. My sister, Christina's legacy. That's what we're doing. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of I don't want to say a hoax, but it's no, we just want to help more people victims of gun violence. If Christina's name, if she stopped being a famous singer, it's more about, I love my sister. I'll always love her. And the person she was got people to love her. So what that means for after, would I like to see her and my mom again? Of course. But would it be the same? Would we all be different? I just, what? I think there's so many, I wound up asking more questions when I'm asked that. And I'm just safe to say I don't know. And I'm out there, if I listen to one of your guests on your pod, I'd love to inquire about the afterlife. I know it's so nuanced because there's so many religions, there's so many facets of it. The ideas are really cool. Are we in a simulation? Is this all just
the ideas are cool? Like you said, the ideas are cool,
and I'd love to see my sister and mom again. It'd be really cool just to speak on human terms with them, if
if it's not human terms, but you still get to connect with them. I have no idea.
It'd probably be even cooler.
Probably right. Imagine I seeing your sister in an orb form. And you really slimmed out up here. I don't know. It's all wild, Brian. I love that you brought up legacy, because I was thinking about this again recently, and it kind of ties into the permission to find joy during grief, because I feel like when people think about legacy, and you think about the legacy of the lost one, that the person that you got in your life, we're part of that legacy. There's different levels of legacy, and maybe they started a company, they left this foundation, but the legacy of the person that we lost continues on with us, which I think therefore is a good way of blending it together. Therefore, we should find joy. We should continue to find that joy in life, even when it's difficult, not expecting life to be perfect, because it's not going to be. I think contentment can be consistent. Happiness is not, but if we look at it now as we are part, I'm part of my father's legacy, not in a sense that I got to do this grandiose thing, but if I am part of his legacy, then I should continue to live life as the best I can in honor of his legacy, and not in a grandiose way. It's just I think that is why we should look for permission, because if you're feeling the pain of someone that died, there was love there. I would hope. Sometimes there's other feelings because maybe you didn't have a good relationship. I'm aware of that. But if you're feeling so much pain from the loss of someone, means I would like to think there's some love there and whatever it was. So with that being there as the foundation, continue to live their life with that love, because you would think that person wouldn't want you to just be miserable. I hope not. If they did, then it's a whole other rabbit hole. It's I don't know what to tell you there, to be honest. But I have no idea what I'm saying. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I think that's okay. And I think it goes back to being accepting of the unknown.
Yeah.
Because I think we're obsessed with just having to know.
We want to know answers. We want closure. We want answers. And I think religion has been a good way for my family. My dad has found peace in believing that he's going to see his family again and that he's doing something for a greater purpose. And I love that. I mean, I have been very fortunate. I wasn't turned away from religion because I had a bad experience, which a lot of people do. More people than I know. But I'm like, dude, the churches I went to were awesome. They're helpful. They're worldwide, close to home, domestically. Yeah. They're good to each other. There was no scandals. They love others. They were kind of like your guy Warren or whatever. They're just opening that if you disagree, oh, okay, they're not. Same with my dad.
Attention.
Yeah, they're just good people. So I'm like, hey, man, if it's doing that to him, cool. You deserve that. I wish I could find, I just can't lie to him. I'm not going to be it'd be cool to feel good to have an idea of when I die, this is it. I just don't. I don't believe it in my heart of hearts. So it's like, I don't want to lie, but I'll still keep looking for whatever that truth is. And if I don't find it, I've accepted that it's okay not to know.
Yeah, and you're still living a life with intention. From what I'm reading, I mean, you seem like a good guy. That compassion, that love, and trying to do good in the world, even though you don't have a belief in an afterlife. So it's like you can find meaning in either direction. Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you can't find meaning. Like I was speaking to an atheist the other day, and he found more meaning that his belief that nothing happens after, because this is all we got.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
You know what I mean? So it's like that's different.
Live like this is all we got. So
I don't know. It's just, again, goes back to what you said, the meaning that we give it. And that seems real enough. Like my personal beliefs, I think it's all tied together. I believe in an afterlife, but that little question mark that's still there. But that makes sense to me. To me, this is all too wild for nothing to happen. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's not enough of a empirical evidence or something that's going to rule in the court of law. But it's this is all just, to me, it's like, this is too wild. Like this, what we're doing right now is too wild for me to think this is it. What the heck? And maybe though, could be. I don't know.
Maybe I should. I agree with you. I think the odds of there being a higher power are higher than not. But it's like, I just think because I've been, I don't want to say indoctrinated or anything, but like I grew up with a certain bias that this is the religion. So I kind of look through the scope of, even when I say God, I think of the God from what I learned.
Right.
But God could be anything. We could be toys to him. We could be science experiments to him. We could be, afterlife could be, who knows? It could be a level up. It could be a level down. We don't know. So all of that could be possible. I just think we look it through this lens of like, heaven's this happy place, helps this bad place. But maybe it's more nuanced than all that too. I don't know. It's fascinating to me to think of, maybe what we do on here, does it affect after? Maybe. It seems like it should. Like what you said, this world's too crazy for it to have zero impact, or just to make like a decision, like I acknowledge this and now you're here. Or
if I find out this is all for naught, then I'm like, what the heck? What the hell? Why? Why is it just supposed to have the experience? That's it?
That's interesting you say that, because I think if I, say we keep our same mind going to the next place, I think I would be like, if you say it didn't matter, whatever you did, I'd be like, well, cool. We did the right things based on what we learned. And to me, that's almost good in and of itself.
Yes.
I wouldn't be like, man, I wish I did more bad things, or I wish I gambled more, but maybe.
Yeah, I gamble sometimes, but I'm not pushing that, guys. You know what I mean? Brian Callen, a comedian, brought up a quote one time. He's like, I like to live my life as if something does happen. Maybe it doesn't, but with that, even that mantra, then it kind of makes you lean into just trying to do your best, because obviously we're all going to mess up. We're not all perfect, do plenty of things wrong, but it's living that notion. So that's where the beauty of sometimes religion makes sense to me. And then you go down a whole other rabbit hole of like religion and control and the darker web of it.
That's just humans, right? They find ways to exploit things that are good, like religion is. All these things are great. It's just I think even religion just is I think people believe it, but there's the bad seeds that just want to manipulate.
Yeah, every aspect is contaminated. Like when I bring up, I type mediums on, people think fraud. All mediums are fraud. I'm sure some of them are frauds. And maybe with the big question mark, they could all be whatever, but maybe they are tapping into something, and doesn't mean everyone's a fraud. So as soon as people hear, someone says a near-death experience or has a spiritual experience, and they mention a religion, it automatically, for some people, just dismiss them. Like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but it's also faulty in my aspect. Just because you think religion is a sham, does that mean all religion's a sham? And just because they bring up God means their story is dismissed?
Exactly.
I mean, it could be. Like maybe, I'm not saying it automatically means it's true at the same time, but just the notion to just associate something with something, automatically dismiss it doesn't fare well for me either.
No, it's very fascinating. I love that topic, just about mediums and like whether it's extraterrestrials, angels, demons, ghosts, because, I'm not even going to pretend like I'm an empiricist or anything, but like I do like, it's easy to kind of, there's data and now we have cell phones and recording devices, so it should be easier to find things. But there's a lot that's unexplained, and it's interesting. So that's why I never want to just go out. I like to kind of look when you hear a story. My first thought is, what is the person who's posted is trying to gain? Because usually it's something, that's the thing.
Follow the money type shit.
Some people are just trying to get a buck, get some views. But no, if you're talking to someone who has a story like this, I love hearing about it. Whether it's religion entailed or just not, or spiritually entailed, it's fascinating. Because what if it is real? I'm open to the idea that there's ghosts and angels and demons, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we're at a point where, there's a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories, people like within my life that have had experiences, stories that I've had. And then there's just some people just really want the hard evidence. And I'm just like, maybe just like you said, there's some things just, as of now, unexplained. And some things maybe we can't exactly prove, and all we have are anecdotes and stories. And we got to listen to our antennas and decide what's real and what's not. So that's where belief is in many times.
Exactly.
It's not,
belief wouldn't be belief if there was always just
like I
data
touch hot lava. Like it's an objective truth. That's hot. But like if I got burned from something that I can't see, okay, I can't go in either direction. And maybe there's also a lot I have to learn at the same time that again may change my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's all we can do. But Marcus, I really appreciate you hopping on here. I don't know if there's anything else you feel like you didn't get off your chest that you want to push on.
Yeah, I would like to say, I think for me, talking about like purpose, and I really do believe that people can always find a purpose. And I've been very fortunate that through everything that's happened, I've been able to find some with our foundation. And genuinely, there was a big hole in the country. There was not anyone giving money or raising money for victims of gun violence. And we witnessed it from the Pulse shooting. We witnessed it from other things. We've seen these families fall through the cracks. And what happens is something were to happen, a mass casualty event or a one-off shooting, and people talk, oh, that's really sad. And then it either gets forgotten about if it's not a big enough story, or they talk about the gunmen, gun laws, mental health. Oh, did they attack someone LGBTQ? Oh, now it's about that and the hate in the government. And then it becomes about politics. And this dominates the discourse. But then we decided to start something with other people, with other nonprofits that we work in line with healthcare services, to be able to give money directly to families affected by gun violence. Literally just to them. Government, just so people know too, the government gives things. Our state, California, is really good with it. They can help families that are affected. It's pretty time consuming. You have to go through a couple channels, but it's usually limited. Grants are limited to specific things. Like sometimes it has to be car payments, has to be house. We can just give grants. Typically $1,500, $2,000. They can spend it on how they want. And that's another thing of what we do. We empower purpose and hope in other people. So it's not monitored. We're not like, oh, you have to spend it on your electric bill now. Because what we found, and is what you would know, and people that's been affected by grief, is they know what to spend it on. They don't need to be told that, man, I need this child care. I lost my husband. Or man, we need the bereavement costs. I need some time away. Oh, we need to move out of our apartment because there's blood on the carpet and we can't live in the killing zone anymore. Like there's so many things. Our pet, one specific instance is there was blood on a pet. And now you have to pay for pet care. That wasn't something that we would. So we even have a miscellaneous option that you could fill. So there's just a lot, and you'd be surprised what falls through the cracks. And again, we don't focus on mass casualties because they get a lot of funding. We work with victim services and Victims First, who they help coordinate these big GoFundMes to make sure they get to the right people. But think of the shootings that you don't hear about. That's who we try and help. The ones who you would never hear about. Maybe it's on the local news for 2 minutes and then bam, it's gone.
And what's the name of the organization?
Christina Grimmie Foundation.
For anyone listening, I'll link that into the show notes. And just to clarify, so this foundation specifically helps people monetarily that have been affected by it. There's no trying to figure out politically
we are nonpartisan. Nothing goes to research, mental health, gun violence prevention, or get in the hands of the right people. It's literally just, there was like a famous World War II nurse that I remember reading about. It was like Edith something. And I was so blown away where she was helping Nazi soldiers and American and British soldiers. And I remember asking, she's like, doesn't matter. I'm just here to help people. I don't care what people are fighting about. There's people bleed, whatever. It doesn't matter. And that's what we're like, to an extent, that's what we want to do. Is like, it doesn't matter what side of the fence you fall on, Republican, Democrat, if you pro-gun, anti-gun. We just know it's like, man, there's folks that really need help. And people that have gone through any kind of grief, they know this.
Yes. That's amazing. And it's also important, because like the cracks that you mentioned, there's like the cracks of grief, all these ancillary stuff that comes up, the miscellaneous that you mentioned that is also not discussed. Like obviously you're dealing with the grief of someone, but then there's the money aspect, there's the services, there's the house, there's the sibling aspect afterwards of who's getting money, there's the credit card statement. There's so much mess that comes with it that often doesn't get talked about, which is, hopefully helped with the monetary thing. And I love that. I love that foundation.
Also, most people realize or don't realize that the grief doesn't even really hit you like a ton of bricks till 6 months to a year after. So we've had some people, like even through victim services, which California, it's the same all throughout. Like they can even all communicate. It's really good. Some states are a mess. It's crazy. Well, you can, after a homicide detective leaves, if it's a murder, they get put with a victim services someone, an advocate, a victim advocate who can help them walk through the steps to get things. And that's how they're referred to us. So we work through those channels. But you'd be surprised at people like, I don't want help now. Nope, I'm good. Like I got my family. But in 3 months, 6 months, we've gotten people tell me, it's never happened to me, thankfully, but we've had people be like, dude, it's been like 6 months. Your wife died 6 months ago. Like, okay, maybe not in those terms, but dude, it's been a year. you should start dating again, right? Or dude, your one son is gone, but you still have another.
Mhm.
Like they'll say things that like, sure, they're trying to be helpful, they're trying to encourage, but it's not good. And that's when they start to realize, oh my God, the family stops coming frequently, your friends stop making you food. So people don't even go to put in the help sometimes or think they need help to a year. And then sometimes you still have the ego where, no, I don't need this. We helped a woman who had 3 kids. They just had a newborn. She had 2 daughters, just had a son when her husband was killed. And we wound up helping her a year and a half later because she reached out to victim services to be like, I said I didn't need help for that first year. I really need help.
Wow.
I need help with babysitting, childcare. I needed help. I had to take off work. Like it's just a mess of things. And you don't realize, like you said, things fall through the cracks and some people don't want help. And we want to know getting help isn't bad. Mm-hmm. We got help. We wouldn't be able to be where we were if we didn't get that help. So
yeah, it's okay to ask for help. And then when that happens, who the heck knows? But it's like there is that cooling off factor. You know what I mean? Like you said, examples of people coming around there, and then all this, that's going to die down. Not everyone's going to constantly check in with you.
People don't realize.
Yeah,
that.
Certain people do. Some people don't want that, but some people will continue to check in X amount of time later. But eventually, when it gets quiet, that's like the weird part.
Yeah, I don't want to say like I still trying to find a word. So if you ever think of something, let me know. So when you're in a relationship, they call it limerence or the honeymoon phase. It happens even with new friendships. It's just. That's sometimes there's a level of like the antithesis to that about death and traumatic loss, where it's like there's this level of like people are coming around you. You're like a celebrity and like the worst, not in that way, but like there's just more attention. And there's this feeling of like this. People are like coming to you, helping, asking if you're okay. It just starts to die off. Yeah. And it's different for others. Some people it's 6 months, some people it's 1 month. Some people it's usually more about a month. It's not like 2 weeks or something, but especially the more traumatic, if people want to, rate them, there is a level of. But anyway, so there's just that word. I think people don't realize that there is this effect that you have on people that when they lose someone in a grief way. Yeah. I mean, I've always felt it's a big part of this discussion is that I've always felt guilty that, even 23 years later, every anniversary, I get a message. And obviously it's dimmed down. But part of me is sometimes I've said this before. I'm like, I wish one anniversary no one texts me. Yeah. But I'm appreciative of it. I'm not diminishing anyone reaching out. It's amazing. And that's the support system that I have. But that's also the odd benefit, if you will, of losing someone in a public light. Like people may be more likely to remember certain things, and having that attention, which can be healing. But then there's people that just lose someone September 11th, 2014, and then they're not getting that messages. They're not getting that attention. That, I'm not saying it's all about attention, but it shows support, and that's the purpose of sharing these stories, to shed light on other people and hopefully offering some glimmer of hope, whatever the heck that means. Well, if you don't mind me asking, how do you feel when you get like those, like the year mark anniversary text? Like, is it something?
Now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's still, it's reflective. It's like, damn, it's kind of what I just said. I'm still getting these messages from often the same people. It's like one girl that I haven't seen since middle school that still will think of me. And it's wild to think of the impact that day had, and just being that kid and people that had the experience indirectly. And that's another whole conversation of these cracks of grief. It's like the people that are affected. Like, what about the people that were in that room with your sister? They didn't lose their sister, but they were in that room and witnessed that. And there's like that effect. It's just this butterfly effect of everything that happens in life that we don't even consider. And I'm not saying it in a way that, like, obviously you lost your sister and you tackled the friggin' gunman, which is wild. But then there's the people that are in that room that are affected for the rest of their life just from hearing the gunshot.
I did really want to talk to some people there. I know one person who was there who were pretty good friends, but that's the only one. I've gotten some letters from people, and some of them are really nice. And there was this whole thing at first where I got like people honored me and called me a hero, and I wanted nothing to do with that term. It didn't feel like it, still doesn't, but at least I'm just saying I don't want to be hypocritical where I would tell someone in a similar spot like, hey, you did good despite, but I really do want to get to talk about you with your family and just the community. I did want to just get to know more people there that night. So I've always, I never really put out something, but I have been trying to be like, I don't even know how to do it. I'd be like, it's weird. I don't want to put a PSA, be like, hey, if you're there, right? Because I have gotten letters from people.
It would be fascinating though if you did. You should do that.
Maybe I will, man. I don't know when. I don't know how. Because I told you I'm shy. I barely post on social media. I do what I have to do. And
but look, get you in a room like this. You're fucking great.
Well, that's because, again, I think having the...
That was me just throwing a line out there. I wanted a compliment, and I'm just kidding.
Yo, this guy's really good.
So, and this is probably do the opposite effect. People are like, that motherfucker talked too much, even though this guy's giving him too much compliments. But that would be a fascinating discussion. That would be a fascinating discussion.
That's what I'm saying. It's, not to bring up like the elephant in the room of podcasts where it's like Joe Rogan. Like the old Joe Rogan, that's what people loved about him. Is just like he would just interview all kinds of people. And it felt like he asked great questions. And he would talk a little, but... you're hosting this show, this isn't like a night show where you're just getting like talent to come pitch something. You're talking about serious topics, and you have a serious, dude, you have like the biggest thing that happened, like tragedy that happened in American history. And you lived through, you were 12, right?
Yeah, 12.
Like, so, I mean, again, it's cool to hear your point. I think I would be more uncomfortable if you just like ask me a question and go, okay, cool. What about this? It's like, it feels like we're talking.
Yeah,
not
this
like
is fun because every conversation is different. We've had a lot more this is a lot more back and forth. Sometimes I'm not speaking at all because this question, they have a long story, but I'm good either way. Either way, it doesn't matter. I just also just fun for me when it is a conversation. Mm-hmm. But again, there's certain episodes I don't need to talk, and it's great. It's like the story. At the end of the day, the focus, we just happen to have that conversation, and we can go down a million different rabbit holes. But I think that would be fascinating to talk to those people that were there, because I personally relate to that, to people that were at 9/11 that day. They obviously, I'm assuming, lost someone, but just from being there,
even in New York at the time,
being there. Yeah, I had like Neil deGrasse Tyson on the show a while back, and we didn't cover the science as much as I expected, but I also knew he was there that day, and that day affected him. He wasn't even at the World Trade Center. He was a block down the road, so we saw everything. But it's like these ancillary effects and these butterfly effects. I think it's more important to consider all these effects. It's hard to focus on all of them because there's a million things happening at once, but sometimes it's not as isolated as them within the circle of the main event, but people that were there, and not in public aspects in general. There's just so much, everyone just gets affected in so many different ways. And I think by looking at it with that, of just considering it, it just gives us a more compassionate lens of the way we see people walking around us every day. My East Coast attitude, I hold the door for someone, they just walk right by me, don't even give me a nod. I'm like, you asshole. Then I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know what that guy's going through. Yeah. Maybe he's an asshole. Sure. But also maybe that guy just got the worst news of his life and X, Y, Z. And it could be a cop-out. I'm not saying, don't take your stance and be firm. And sometimes you got to be a dick. I do believe that sometimes. But in the overall foundation of the way I live my life, it's like it's been way more compassionate now, having these conversations. It's softened me up a little bit. But it's important. It's softened me up for sure. But I do think there are moments in life you got to be firm and be direct and not be a pussy.
You can do that with, like you said in one of your podcasts, do everything with love, right?
Yeah.
It's just like that level of just, you can do things with you can stand up, you can be aggressive defending things that's right with love. Yeah. 100%. So I like that.
Yeah, it's that tough love sometimes. And I think it could be a good thing and a bad thing, but then again, what the heck is good and bad? Anyway, dude, I thank you for doing this. You're awesome. You're a blast to talk to, easy to have a conversation with. I hope you felt the way of honoring your sister, honoring your mom. And it was wonderful. So I appreciate the time to do this. I'm going to, again, for anyone listening, as usual, there's so many cameras here. I will plug the link in the bio for his foundation. I think that's amazing what you've turned that into, helping other people. That's the purpose of finding meaning. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Of course. Until next time, y'all, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Peace out. Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.